Hi, I'm Andrew Schneider, and I made this game, Nocked. It's a massively branching, multiple choice role-playing game about everyone's favorite English outlaw. So it's probably no surprise that I'm here today to talk to you about Robin Hood, how awesome he is, and how that is a huge problem when writing him in interactive fiction. Now, you are probably wondering, how is being awesome a problem? After all, the Hand-Eye Society is awesome. D&D is awesome. Chris Klimas, who opened this convention and created Twine and actually helped develop this game, is awesome. But Robin being awesome is different. He's the best archer, the best swordsman. When he shoots, he scores. When he talks, people listen. When he tries, he succeeds. And that is our framework, our closed system. Robin has to be awesome. In which case, where's the tension? What's the draw? And those are archery jokes, by the way. Why should anyone care about this beyond being coerced if he hacked? How do we take a series of choices that always succeed and turn them into a story that anyone cares about, into a game that anyone would want to play? So, a funny thing happened to me when I first started early beta testing. I had friends come up to me and they'd say, "Oh, no, I want to talk to this guy." I'm like, well, hold on a second, you're Robin Hood? And it's Guy, with a capital G, as in Guy of Gisborne, the sheriff's cousin. I don't want to shoot my bow in this scene. I'm a chatty guy, and I'd love to talk to you further after this, and it's true in games as it is in life. I love talking to all of the non-player characters, finding out their backstories, doing their secret little quests. It never occurred to me that someone would want to skip all the good parts of the game, that someone would want to play Dark Robin, the quiet, high-functioning sociopath. And that was a revelation. If I was going to do this game justice within our previously established framework, I couldn't just write one story. I had to write many stories. And, as you previously saw, to do this without just turning it into an exercise of infinite choice, I was going to need to co-opt the player as more than just a passive consumer, but as an active partner in the storytelling. And there was that. For starts, I got the player to help establish boundaries actively, to create a playground in which that they would tell the story, with choices like, where do you want to have your base? Do you want it in a giant tree, or in a castle, or maybe in a dragon's cave? Then I would give them guided choices, based on previous options that they'd taken, to help develop consistent characterization or playstyle. When you meet Maid Marian, she has a guess as to what your backstory might be, but the ultimate choice between farmer or princess or anything in between is in your hands. Unless you like your text adventures on hard mode, then I take that option away. I also give implicit or hidden choices to develop these boundaries, options that hint at but have unexpected effects on the game world. So you always meet Maid Marian, and there's always at the end of 3 pathways in the forest, but which pathway you take determines whether she's a noble, or an outlaw, or even a sorceress. Now you're probably saying to yourself, wait a minute, Sorceress Marian, Dragon's Cave, Lady Robin, these are not canon options, and you would be correct. But it is these outlier choices in the gameplay, these unusual options, that when you respect them and incorporate them into the story, really encourage buy-in from the player. It empowers them and makes them feel like continuing, which brings us to our next slide. It's important to constantly pamper the player. Every time they do something, give them a little reward, and because my arms get kind of tired, we give them resources, things like gold. This is especially important when the consequences of their actions are not immediately apparent until much later in the game. But then, where's the tension? In this case, I'm contractually obligated to support Robin's choices in all things, but the merry men are under no such protections. And if it's through thoughtlessness or incautiousness, when they perish, when they fail, that's the tension and that's the risk in storytelling. And if I'm doing my job correctly, and I've developed bonds and intimacy with the non-player characters, then that kind of stuff matters to the player. Unless you're playing Dark Robin. Dark Robin doesn't care. It doesn't matter. And that's okay, because I have to respect player agency in this. I have to let them make choices that I wouldn't do if I were playing the game. I have to let them knock Little John into the river and not rescue him. I have to let them send Will Scarlet off to the Crusades and say sayonara, never see him again in the entire game. And then I have to reward them with something really cool. It's these negative choices that further define and refine the boundaries of the story so that every playthrough for every player feels unique. A more extreme example, let's say you want to play Robin who does not want to raid the sheriff's tax caravans and refuses to do so every single opportunity that's presented. For them, they get a really cool hidden scene and one of my favorite scenes in the entire game. So now that we have the player saying yes to the dress, and in some cases this is literal in costume scenes, how do we corral this huge array of open choices into a coherent storyline? And I use two techniques, time and tiny boxes. Time is the definitive mechanism of the story arc in Nocked. When you go on a raid, maybe a few days pass. If you plan or prepare for an assault on Castle Nottingham, an entire season will pass, and that's wonderful, because time is impersonal, it's non-judgmental, it doesn't compete with or constrain the player throughout the gameplay, and it's predictable. It's triggered at their command. They get to do what they want, when they want, and they know that those choices are going to have consequences. Which brings us to our next slide, the tiny boxes of adventure. These are small stories, or very small story arcs within our larger story, like chapters in a book, the river crossing, or the May Day parade, or the archery tournament. And within each of these spots, I try to give as much freedom as possible, and then pluck elements, either decisions that players make or small truths about the world, to integrate into the larger story and create a living, breathing world for the player as much as possible. Say completely optionally that you decide to buy weapons from the smith in the beginning of the game. You have a very different scene and a very different conversation with him later on when he turns into a bounty hunter. The tiny boxes are also a great place to integrate all these rewards that we've been showering the players with, like Halloween candy, the entire game. They're a tool for pacing. We can use them to lock options and stories until we're ready, say by accumulating a certain amount of gold, or by spending a certain amount of gold. And let's say you keep all that gold that we've been giving you, and you sit on it. You don't spend it on your base, you don't hand it out to the people, you just sit on it. The dragons of Sherwood are very greedy. If you are hoarding all of your gold, they may come sniffing around, and you might have a cool optional scene with them. So, by engaging the player as a partner in the storytelling, by pacing the game through time and tiny boxes, and by respecting player agency, by only giving them choices that you will allow and integrate into the story, I feel like it could be a tagline for the entire day, but the words are mine, the story is yours. And we are left with no dead ends. Thank you.